Hi, everybody. Welcome to All of It. I'm Alison Stewart. Thank you so much for joining me today. We start this hour with the first English language film from the legendary director Claire Denis, a sci-fi examination of humanity. And two things to know: this conversation may include some spoilers, and the film does include some subject matter that we as adults can and should discuss, but might not be great for little ones to hear. The film High Life centers around a man who is in a specifically hellish kind of jail. In the earliest scenes in the film, we watch a man just simply trying to survive. His name is Monty, and he's stuck on what initially kind of seems like a space station. He's got a baby with him named Willow. But we come to learn that Monty and Willow weren't always alone. Monty, along with 7 other death row inmates, were launched into space in a prison-like vessel to serve as lab rats for an obsessed doctor, a murderess herself, who is now conducting reproductive experiments. The film High Life is part of a sci-fi film, part thriller, and fully an interrogation of what it means to be human when all conditions of humanity have been removed. Let's take a listen.
We were scum. Trash. Refuse that didn't fit into the system. Until someone had the bright idea of recycling us to serve science.
The odds are not in our favor. But when my work is accomplished, when perfection is achieved...
Then what? Fly away?
I know I look like a witch.
You're foxy and you know it.
This mission can't turn our shame into some type of glory. I can't do this flying around no more.
You lied to us. You knew it.
The sensation, moving backwards. Even though we're moving forwards, getting further from what's getting nearer.
There is nothing to fear. Everything's gonna be fine.
Are you sick? You realize nothing is ever gonna go inside us.
Break the laws of nature. You'll pay for it.
Yeah, it's all that. High Life opens this weekend at AMC Lincoln Center and the Angelica. It was co-written and directed by Claire Denis. Claire, welcome.
Hello. Good morning.
Good morning. And we also are joined by one of the film's actors, Robert Pattinson. Rob, nice to be here. Nice for you to be here, I should say. I'm glad you're here, is what I should say. Claire, so this filmed, this screened at BAM this week. It's part of a big retrospective of your work. And there was a bit of a Q&A after, and it was really interesting. You answered that the idea came for the script, part of it came from when you were in Texas, which is one of our 30 states with the death penalty. When did you realize you wanted this film to be about death row inmates? And what happened in Texas that led you to that?
Oh, I think I always thought to send people like lab rat, as you say, would be to use people that nobody wants to keep, on Earth. And I thought, I always thought it was like that, something, using them for... As I read when I was in Texas, I remember now that I read death row were costing a lot of money to the community, and it would be better to use those people differently so that they can serve humanity.
And when you read that, you felt that was horrible?
Yeah, I did. I have a terrible feeling about death penalty. And death row, it's worse because it's death penalty waiting for years and years and years.
So the emotional strain of that, plus what is waiting for this human being at the end. It's interesting in the film, it's a sci-fi film, but the science fiction part isn't that normal. We're going to go colonize someplace, or we're going to fight aliens, or we're going to figure out if there's life. It really sort of takes a secondary, I don't want to say secondary, it takes a different tone. What was it? What role did you want science and space to play in telling this story, if it's not these sort of things we're used to?
I don't know. I don't like the idea of colonize another planet. This is something I really don't like. I don't like also to see cosmonaut as soldier, And I I have nothing against Alien, but I was not inspired by any alien, you know. I think so. I thought maybe I will, with what I know, with what I've read, the knowledge of today in astrophysics was maybe enough to try just to leave the solar system in searching for the black hole energy, if it's possible to approach one. Yeah.
So, Rob, this is a role you really wanted. Why did you really want this role?
Well, I've really loved Claire's movies for a long time, and
Claire's being very, very modest and has her fingers in her ears and her eyes, her hands over her eyes.
Modest, you know. I am realistic.
No, but I mean, I was sort of pursuing any. Well, I mean, I thought she hadn't made a movie purely in English before. I mean, characters in English, but I just saw it was sort of outside the realm of possibility. I mean, when this came up initially, it was written. The part was supposed to be an older guy who's in his 50s, but I met her anyway, and I don't know, just got very lucky. But there's something about her style of directing that I love the performances in her movies so much, and I always try and find if any stories kind of touched me, and but especially if I see performances which I kind of want to be in that sort of world, then I always like to chase down the directors and try and force them to work with me.
What was something that you learned from Claire as an actor, working with her as a director?
I think that you don't necessarily need to fully be able to explain exactly what's going on at all times. Even though I said this yesterday when we were doing another interview, and Claire just fully explained in a very, very, very detailed way something that I thought was unexplainable. So it might just be me not being able to comprehend things. But yeah, it's sort of, I think being able to work in an environment where you can pull inspiration from lots of slightly unusual sources. I mean, I was kind of, I'd be looking at a painting for to relate that to the character rather than just thinking of things in a totally cerebral way.
My guests are Rob Pattinson and Claire Denis. We're talking about the film High Life, which opens this weekend. As Rob said, this part was written for a much older man, a different kind of physicality. What was good about having Rob in the role? What could you change about the role by having a younger man in the piece?
Actually, I didn't think I had to change. Suddenly, meeting him, I realized it was a character all right, you know. It was him and nobody else. And I don't remember what I said yesterday so intelligently about being a director and directing an actor. What I know is this morning I'm thinking about Robert, watching him, and I thought maybe Robert has something special. He's like a man, a young actor, traveling into cinema. He's like, he's himself. He's, of course, a great actor, interpreting the character, but he's also like walking from film to film with his mystery. And I think this I like, you know. I like very much someone keeping a sort of identity of curiosity. Is curious of film, of cinema, curious of filmmaking, and therefore is traveling from film to film intensely, but is also giving to the film a different point of view. I mean, would not have been the same without him, I'm sure. Is my English understandable?
Perfectly.
All right.
I have English speakers in here who I don't understand as well as I understand you.
Okay.
This film is challenging for the audience. You keep us guessing. we're not sure if this is a Robinson Crusoe situation in the beginning. Is he abandoned? Is he an astronaut? Is he not? When we meet the others who are on, they're in like a cryogenic state. You're thinking, are they dead? Are they alive? Are they going to be awakened later? I'm curious why you chose to tell the story not in a non-linear way, not chronologically.
Oh, two reasons mainly. One is that I always wanted the film to start with this baby and this man alone in space. That's it. And the garden. This is what I wanted always. Like something almost something you could feel, not so extravagant in space, normal gesture, normal word. Speaking to the baby, crying, feeding the baby, all this I wanted. And also maybe I thought because of it's about time relativity, I thought maybe it would be better to have this huge flashback in the middle, like as a time that is not even the time on Earth, It's the time of this trip. That's all.
I love that about it. And one of the things I love about the time is how the Dr. Gibbs character, Juliette Binoche, her hair is so long. So there's been an enormous amount of time which has passed.
Sure,
it's down by her
she
mid-calf.
decided never to cut.
So Rob, when you read the part of Monty, how did you feel about him coming away after you saw it on the page, before you even really got into the production?
I mean, it's funny because there's something softer in a way when I see the movie. When I first read it, I thought, there's something, because I initially read quite a short treatment, and so if you read that character in basically the highlights of the story, there's just flashes of violence and and any character which he's so obsessed with trying to kind of keep a rigorous psychological control over themselves, the assumption is that there is a kind of like out of control animal underneath, and so I was initially reading that as a kind of a much darker part. But as soon as you start doing something with a baby, and as the first 2 weeks of it were just with a 13-month-old baby, and so you inevitably you can't help but behave in a certain way, and then it kind of brought something. I just started thinking quite differently about the character. You have someone who's probably got a lot of guilt and shame about their past behavior, and also confusion and resentment, and then so even allowing yourself to feel some kind of love, there's some kind of shame associated with that as well. And I guess that was kind of what I found quite interesting. There was a scene that someone was asking about yesterday about when my daughter is older, and and we see another ship. I'm giving away spoilers.
I warned them. Don't be spoiling.
And she does, and I say, "Oh, we should." There's a sort of mortal terror in me, thinking that, I don't really want. I'm so used to my little world by this point that I don't actually. I'm terrified that my daughter will suddenly find out that I've been maybe living in an unethical way with her, or she'll want to leave, and then I'll be definitely alone. And it's a really strange reaction because he is. I don't know. There's something bad about him, or something monstrous, and I always kind of like that idea of what does that look like if someone thinks of themselves as a bad person, when they feel something that makes them proud, or how does kindness or kindness to them show in their face at that point, if it's different to a normal person, if that makes any sense.
The baby in this film is extraordinary. She's just this little round cherub, like just all soft, no angles, which is great because everything else is so angular and elbows.
She's very intelligent too, and alive, and He found the baby.
You found the baby.
Yeah.
It's your friend's baby.
I know her dad would be like, all soft, no angles, that's from me. He'd be devastated.
For our listeners who don't know, the original child didn't work out, and the baby in the film is the child of a friend of yours, right?
Yeah.
So, babies are unpredictable. That makes them exciting and sort of terrifying at the same time sometimes. Was there anything that this little bright child did that we see in the film that really helped move it forward in a way for either of you?
I'm sorry.
Anything spontaneous that the baby did?
Oh, of course. We were all waiting on her, She was the center of all the attention, The film, of course, we were doing the scene we were supposed to do, like in the garden, for instance, when she's feeding you with the strawberry or things like that. But she did even better than I ever dreamed. But of course, I would not ask her, or even Robert. I mean, we were like admiring, and we felt so great. It was like such a great moment to be filming a little girl alive and discovering a new world, not only a father and mother, but people around her, learning how to walk,
It's so nice working with a baby as well, because I've worked with a few babies in other movies, and normally they would have a minor part in a scene, and it's normally just incredibly stressful to get them to, because they need to look, like I said, almost every single time we work with a baby, the baby has to be asleep, which is then the most impossible thing to do on the set. But with Scarlett on this, it's so nice to be able to just, we just wait. We're almost reliant on her to just do whatever you want, and we'll just kind of follow you.
Well, she's super important.
Yeah, and she really enjoyed it as well.
To the story. Great. I mean, it's hugely important.
Yeah.
My guests are Claire, Denis, and Robert Pattinson. The name of the film is High Life, and it opens this weekend. I want to talk about the set a little bit. So it's not glossy and glamorous in space. It almost looks like a shipping container. That's what I thought, like we're shipping humans out into the world. We're going to get rid of them, and maybe they'll be useful in some way. What was the decision behind having everything being kind of dull, and also sort of, I thought, like the lowest budget of space travel, like, milk gallon jugs and things. What was the purpose behind that?
I thought in the mind of the people who sent them, they did not deserve better, but a sort of flying gel, and nothing better, the minimum to survive. And the minimum is extremely important because they are important. But only the minimum, and if possible, not in a nice way, so they still remember they are convict.
It's quite shocking as well when we went to the European Space Agency.
Yeah.
I think everyone thinks that the reality of spacecraft are really fancy looking, but when you actually look at like the pod, which, what is it called, the little pod?
Soyuz.
The Soyuz.
The Soyuz is what they use to go back on Earth.
Yeah,
right.
The Soyuz, it's so basic, the technology, it hasn't changed since the 60s, and like if you're too short in the Soyuz to touch the controls, they literally have a wooden poker stick, like to control the thing to come back from space, and it's just got the stick next to it. Yeah. It's like, and that is still what they use.
and the Soyuz being built in Russia, the technician who is taking care of it is Russian, and he said, but at least it works. Yeah. It's solid. You can trust that Soyuz. Mm-hmm. That's all that is important. Mm-hmm.
One of the main sort of really interesting facets of your character, and you touched on it earlier, is that Monty will not take part in these experiments, these reproductive experiments. He remains celibate. He won't provide sperm. He won't use a room where people can go to masturbate. He's deciding he's going to remain chaste. Mm-hmm. Why do you think he does that?
I think it's a control thing. I think if the only thing you have is your body, and then people try and take your body from you as well, you end up trying to, I don't know. It's I guess it's a similar thing to sort of self-harm. Like you kind of, you want if everyone else is taking it off you, then you want to, I don't know, either deface it and degrade it or just deny it things. Like it's kind of.
As long as you're doing it yourself.
As long as you're doing it yourself,
right.
yeah. And
that's what changed when Robert decided to be in the movie instead of a older man. It's that I realized immediately Robert, for me, evoked the figure of one of the knight of the story of the knight of the round table. Yeah. And I remember always this. For me, when I was reading that as a child, it was very impressive for me that Lancelot is having an affair with the queen, and Percival, I don't know if I pronounce well in English, wants to stay chaste and pure, because he knows that if he does that, he will be able to get the
sword.
The sword, because out of being pure or not doing things that might he could lose the direction. And I always thought it would be something like that, even if it's naive. I think sometimes sport people they try also to keep to themselves, you know, and also for meditation, like a monk, you know, there is always something that is, especially for men. For women, it's always different. Women are not as respectful as men in that way. They could be raped. They could be, you know. I mean, they are not pure anyway, you know. But for men, it's really great to think of that. Because I'm sure still today people believe in that. I'm sure.
I do have to ask one more question. I was thinking about as I was watching the film, and you mentioned the other night that you're not a religious person, but there was that sense of this Garden of Eden, but also this hellish landscape, and then this doctor playing God, trying to make people. Is that, I mean, do you think at this point that story just transcends religion? That is just a myth for anybody to tell?
I couldn't say it's, I try to, a myth. No, I'm more humble than that. But I think being raised in the Occidental world, I know all those stories, you know. If there is something that brings me a sort of question about what is the universe made of, is that thing that could happen if someone was going through a black hole. Is there another side of the universe or not? Or is there a sort of eternity? You know, is there a big bang? Or as some scientific people think, a big bounce? This, for me, it's so striking. Maybe there is not a God, or maybe a God, I have no idea, but something there that only astrophysicians, all those people, I'm sure they constantly think about that, you know. They have to, I'm sure.
Rob, last question. This is either really easy or really hard.
It's going to be hard. No matter what the question is.
What do you like about this movie?
I mean, there's a lot of different things, but I mean, I remember watching it. I've seen it 3 or 4 times now. The first time I watched it with Claire, we were just laughing our heads off. There are so many bits of it which I just thought was so audacious and strange, and that you will never seen before in a movie, and definitely will never see again. But then the second time I watched it with some people I knew from LA, and because they had no idea what they were going to watch, you could really feel. I love having a movie which creates this sort of I don't know, this, I don't know if it's astonishment or something. It's kind of
disgust.
But there's something, because it's for such a dark movie as well. There's something so strangely hopeful about it, and you don't really know why. There's some like you have no idea what you're feeling, and it's a feeling that can only be evoked through a movie. I hope. It's a yeah. I think, I don't know. Maybe I'm kind of overblowing it a little bit.
I can say, to add something, I think I am not trying to provoke. Never. It was never in my mind, especially with this film. And I think it's just, I try to be honest with myself and not a provocative person. So I think when I watch the film, I see a lot of love, emotion, human emotions. That's all I can say.
The name of the film is High Life. It's
and
opening,
the beauty of the music.
And the beauty of the music. High Life will open in theaters today. Robert Pattinson and Claire Denis, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much.
Coming up next, Dave Davies of the Kinks will be in studio. You're listening to all of it on WNYC.